What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 3 of our Mashable Podcast. Today, I'm with a very good friend of mine, Ace, who is going to talk to us about data and whether our data belongs to us. So, Ace, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Ace. Working as a product designer, specialized in UX. Been doing data is basically the primary workforce behind that, and so pretty familiar with the subject.
Right. So, guys, again, if you are listening to this podcast in the car, please do drive safe. If you're at home, grab yourself a cup of coffee, because the first question is, what is data, right? Because a lot of people talk about data. A lot of people say that, data is very important to us and all that. But I don't think people understand what is data, right? What comprises of data?
Yeah. It's a very common question. What is data? Technically speaking, everything that's floating around the air, whatever that we do, pattern behavior, privacy, personal information, those are data. But in this context, what we're really talking about is most likely our emission, if that makes sense. So imagine like human is an automobile. We're moving around from one location to the other location. An automobile emit carbon dioxide and so on. We emit one and zeros. Wherever we move, wherever we do online, we emit to the data, right? And this is in terms of context of data. The misconception on data, people think like, your name, your location, your date of birth. That is true. That is also a data. But in this context, that data is not valuable because that data is regulated. What the company are looking at are most likely is your behavior, your history, and what your transaction you done online. And that data are more valuable than your name, more valuable than your email address, because that data is not regulated and it is available in the market for selling and buying.
Right. So do you think it's safe to say that data is probably the most valuable commodity in this world at this point?
Absolutely. Data-driven is a slogan that most of the company use, right? I am a data-driven company. I solve problem by data-driven. Even my job, if we were to create a feature, to create a product, it's going to be based on data. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I know that you work in a company that deals with data, especially in your line of work, right? So now I think the more important question is that we need to educate people, right? That how companies are collecting our data, right? Yeah. So what are the ways that companies are collecting data? So I think we have a friend, right? A mutual friend who has told us about this that is quite scary, right?
Yeah.
That you pass by on the highways, and I think most of you have seen like billboards that you pass by, and apparently those billboards are collecting your data, right? They are pinging your phones for some information, right? Seems a bit far-fetched, right? But so have you heard of anything like this before?
No. Well, yes, but I wouldn't thought it's a reality. Do you watch the Minority Report, right?
Yeah.
What's that bloke name? I don't remember. It's not Tom Hanks, is it the guy?
Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise, yeah. Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise walking the hallway. Yeah. And then you have this advertising just screaming his name.
Right?
Yeah. But everyone looking at different billboard, right? Because of the preference. Well, that kind of concept. There is more a concept. It is a bit far-fetched from reality. But in 2016, AT&T Data and also a billboard agency called ICCTU actually came up with a program called Radar, which is using location, driving patterns, hours, time, and so on to basically give them a relevant information to clientele and give a good recommendation of what type of advertising works during whichever hours or whichever location.
Right.
But it's not really happening everywhere because it costs too much resource, too much power, and expensive. But so far as I know, it's in the US. I don't know if that's happening in Asia.
But do you think that this is an ethical way to collect data? Because we don't have the option to opt out of it, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like if now you're going to join, like especially when that Article 13 passed, a lot of companies were asking you, right? Like, look, we are collecting your data. You okay with this or not, right? Before this, they didn't ask us. But how are billboards going to ask us about that, right? So do you think that it is ethical that billboards are still doing this?
Yeah, I think what you mean is CGPD. Yeah, the General Protection Data Act.
Yeah.
Not the Article 30.
Sorry, yeah.
Yes, because whatever the data that they use or they extract or they consume are what we call an anonymous data. So what happened is that they can't pinpoint who's this data belong to, because that would be the breach of privacy.
Right.
So yes, they have, technically speaking, they have location of individual. They have the location, they have the pattern and behavior and so on. But they will not have the information such as how old is these people, what is precisely his name, or what is his gender. What data do they use or they consume or they bind from a third party is most likely the average data, average anonymous data, the average age, the average genders and driving pattern and so on. And these will never be regulated. So technically speaking, is it ethical? I think yes. That's my argument. I think it's ethical, because otherwise, how would you provide a PII to people? You can't give a relevant information. You can't give a relevant recommendation without this type of data, right?
Right. Okay, that's fair. Now let's talk about social media, right? Because like generally the whole entire world is on social media, right? Those that have access to internet and social media. So what's very interesting is that Facebook back in 2018, right, admitted that they actually track the user's mouse movements on social media, right? So what I click, right, who I interact with, right, and the people that I'm close with. Because for example, if I were to click on your profile a lot, they will know that I have some kind of connection with you, right? Which in turn might jeopardize your information, right? Because they know that, oh, this person's interest is another person, and why not let's bank in on this person as well.
Yeah, we call that event tracking, basically. Not just Facebook. This is what happened in reality. That there's so many websites out there is actually tracking your mouse movement. If you go to a random website, they actually track this, and it is available online by analytic tools such as Hotspot. Sorry, not Hotspot. SmartLook. And so on. You have the option, if you own a website, you have the option to allow to record your user pattern
by law.
By law, yes, because these are your user.
Right.
The law dictates that as long as this data do not get out without anyone consent, then that will be breaching of privacy. Right. So if you sign up, part of when you sign up with website, all this TNC, this is written part of the TNC, that you are agree that you share data to this company and so on. They can use this data in what is ethical. So they say they're not going to sell it, but as a matter of fact, they have this data. They have your mouse movement. They know where you click. They even know how long you spend in the website in media format. Right. A literal recording of your screen. And that's what's happening right now. About Facebook, it kind of hit and miss. Because when you sign up with Facebook, you're already giving up that courtesy a long time ago.
Yeah, and that's probably included in the TNC, which no one reads, right?
Yeah. Interesting fact about the TNC, there is 7 attorneys spent 7 days publishing Forbes reading TNC documents that they still can't understand.
Right.
What is
and that's
crazy.
And that's very interesting, right? Because it brings us to our second topic, right? Which is the fear of data collection, right? Because, so once again, right, TNCs, when is the last time that you read a TNC complete?
When's the last time? I don't think I ever read a TNC complete.
Right. Yeah, because I don't either. But, in a lot of companies, they tell you that, in the TNC that we're not going to collect your data, we're not going to sell your data, right? But how much of this can we trust, right? Because I can tell you something, right? And in between the TNC, I can hide it, right? Like, for example, that app by Russia where, it changes how your face looks like. That
make you look old.
Make you look old and all that. Yeah, so apparently in the TNC, it states that they can use that data and however they want.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a bit scary, right? Because I don't want my face to appear in like a Russian ad, right?
Yeah.
Without my consent, because like how can they use my face, right? So that's the thing, right? So do you think that it is okay that companies are taking these TNCs and like making it so damn long.
Absolutely not. I mean, who agree on TNC that, or who agree on giving data to a third party company and so on, right? I think no one ever agree, but that's what's happening right now. The regulator are making, I mean, at least data. It's going to be part of the subjects that lawmakers, regulators are going to talk about. So hopefully they're going to make a better regulation on that. European did a great job with the Data Protection Act. US are moving forward with regulation on data. But if we go back to that specific thing, which is or was it? Sorry, what's the
so like TNCs, right?
Yeah, TNCs. What happened is that they say that they can use the data, which wherever they see fit, and they can sell it, right? But they technically can't sell your data. So in the process of this buying and selling is that they have your data, but they have to anonymize it. So they have to pull away your personal information, such as your name, your email, your birthday, and so on. What they actually giving to a third-party company is your patterns, your behavior. And that's what actually they mean by selling. Because if they were to give your name, email address, and so on, that would be a massive breach of privacy.
Yeah.
And that's the latest scandal on the Facebook Analytica. That scandal, particularly that scandal, right?
During the US elections.
Yeah.
Right? So actually, why don't you explain to us, right, about Facebook Analytica, right? Because I think a lot of people still don't understand how important, right, the gravity of that problem, right, that is actually affecting the US election.
Yeah.
Right. So that can happen in literally any country, right? If they want to. Right?
So the biggest concern or the biggest part of that scandal is that they have your name. A third-party company such as the Facebook Analytica have your name, your friend's name, your email address, and your birth of date and gender and so on. That is a massive breach of privacy. So in what happened is that Facebook always allowed this type of data before this scandal. They allowed this type of data to be accessed in the third party or accessed by developers in agreement that they wouldn't use it. Right. So it's sort of like ethics for developers to always pull out this personal information, so you and anonymize the data so you can be used in third party and so on. But Facebook did not enforce this. And what happened with this particular scandal is that they are using your name, they're using that name, they're using that personal information and move that information forward to more and more company outside of Facebook. And that is a massive breach of privacy. And
then technically illegal, right?
So the rest of history. Yeah.
So do you think that Facebook has to be,
regulated?
Yeah, regulated even more, right? Because this is something I want to talk about. So because I think it's very important that I remember when we were hanging out, right, when we watched that documentary, not really a documentary, more like a news kind of thing about the Facebook's Libra, right, and how Facebook is trying to make Libra into this currency that is going to be, like the USD, right. But the problem is Facebook has a privacy problem, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Like for some reason, whatever that you search on Facebook, like a Facebook app is on, right? There is like, people feel like it's being stolen, right? They're recording what you're saying, because so we are talking about new shoes and then suddenly we're getting ads on Facebook about shoes.
They don't have the best impression of data,
basically. Right. Okay. So that's one of the fears, because I think people don't understand the gravity of Libra, right?
Yeah. But at the same time, we can't agree that the government should involve in this private company.
Right.
I mean, that's what happened in communism, China, right? Every company so basically privacy in China is non-existent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Every time you register with some app in China, that data will pass along to government. Now, if we ask that question, do we want that? Not really,
No.
right? But at the same time, should one company be super powerful and not regulated? Also no, right? It's part of which is why the lawmaker and the regulator are working, I think, tirelessly to find a good middle ground. Europeans set a good example with the Data Protection Act.
Right.
following up with the Article 13 for your privacy, for copyright and so on. However, you will never please both sides, right? Because if that happened, you can argue as a business owner, as a media owner, you are limited to whatever that law is doing.
Mm-hmm.
The European interests are to protect the consumer.
Yeah.
But by protecting the consumer, you limit the range and the capabilities of what company can do, right? Which is not also a very good thing.
Right. So I think the issue is that they cannot find the middle ground, isn't it? Like, how do we regulate companies from taking data but not make it counterproductive?
Yeah. It's a hard question to answer, because we don't know what's the middle ground is, right? What is middle ground? Well, middle ground is basically two sides of the coin are equally happy or agree on terms, right? But I don't think that's going to be even possible.
Because how much data you are willing to share might be different from how much data I'm willing to share, right?
Right, yes. So there will always be someone who don't care about data. There will always be someone who don't even care about the whole subject, right? But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about creating an equal footwork in terms of law and regulation that everyone can enjoy. I understand that you don't care about data, but we have to protect the one that does care, even though it's 1% of the population. And hopefully from there you educate people about how important your data is.
So, John, do you care about your data?
Obviously, yes.
How much of your data have you shared with the world? I mean, John, like for example, John is always on Insta story, right? Sharing his life. Yeah. So what do you think about if companies are actually recording your Insta stories every day?
I think it's okay if they're recording, but I still choose what I want to post.
I actually don't have a beef with this type of direct service provider. Right. So companies such as Google, Facebook, Apple, and Uber's, Airbnb, and so on. What make them different than the rest of the company, the middleman companies, that they don't have a middleman.
Right.
They provide the services to you directly. So like Alibaba do not own any inventory or warehouse, yet they are the biggest. They have biggest fulfillment, the biggest inventory provider in the world, right? Airbnb do not own any property, yet they are the biggest property
in the world,
right? In the world, and so on with the Uber. But with data, what they can use is to improve the PII to you, right? The personal intelligent recommendation to you.
Yeah.
And that is a good way of using data. But in reality, they're selling this data at the same time to third-party companies.
No, let's come back to the point of like, okay, so
you share data. Yeah, I mean, you asked.
Okay, so so that's interesting, right? Because I choose who I want to share my data with, companies, right? So for example, I don't like sharing my data with Google. Right. I know it's weird, right? Because I use everything Android, right? But why I don't like to share my data with Google is because when I did share my data with Google, I'm not getting relevant ads, right? For example, they know I'm not a Chinese person. I don't understand. See, Google is listening to me.
Yeah, Google listening to you.
Google is listening to me. They don't like I'm talking about them, right? Come on, Google. This ain't your conversation. All right. So I don't like sharing my data with right? Because the reason why is when I watch YouTube, I watch a lot of YouTube, right? I mean, my job revolves around YouTube, right? And every time I'm watching something and an ad appears, right? So they know I'm not Chinese, right? They know I'm a brown person, I'm an Indian, right? And I play a lot of video games, but yet they recommend me Chinese video games, right? And I don't understand that. Like, okay, what am I doing wrong, right? I'm sharing with you my data. I'm giving you what you want, right? To give me back what I want, right? Which is something we're going to talk about later anyway, but that's besides the point, right? So I'm giving you what you want. You're not giving me back what I want, right? I feel like this relationship is not working out, right? So that is why I kind of stopped giving my data to Google. In fact, to the point where I actually went into my what I want to share with, and I canceled out everything. right? In hopes that I can refresh the system.
Have you ever thought that maybe the lack of sharing giving you a shitty recommendation?
Lack of sharing what? It means like
the less data that you share with Google,
right?
The more data you share, which improve the recommendation, a better preference. They know what you like, what your pattern is, what your behavior is, right? With the data that you share, maybe because the lack of data that you shared, you getting.
But here's the thing: when I'm sharing my data, I'm not getting what I want. Right. So it comes to the point, like, why should I share my data with someone who's not giving me what I want? Which is why I started cancelling it, right? So these Chinese ads happen when at the point where I didn't really care about, okay, fine, take my data. I don't find my data to myself valuable.
Right.
I doubt you're gonna find my data valuable, right? But the point is that I'm always searching about video games. I'm always researching about video games, but yet I'm getting ads that are Chinese ads. So it's like what's happening here, right? Are you actually like bothered? If you're not bothered, then don't collect my data.
So advertising, it's give or take, because the advertising relying a lot of data, preference data, and so on. When they extract it, they fit into this complex model just to get a right target audience, right? But sometimes it's still depending on the third party company who use advertising, whether they want to have this type of recommendation or not. So advertising is a bit tricky. But what we can compare is if you go to Amazon,
right?
If you go to maybe just a pure e-commerce,
so like Shopee or Lazada,
right? Shopee, Lazada, Happy Fresh, and so on, right? The more they will recommend your item based on your history,
yes,
right? And more often or not, you see the product recommended. It's something that you like. Especially if you get on Amazon, if you just use the app in a month, and you will see the recommendation filled with things that you might like, and they coming that from what item you search, what item you view, what item you click, and what you have in your wish list and your cart, right? So, but it's better recommendation because again, it's PII, is a direct service provider. They use that data to you specifically. Advertising is something like Google say, hey, this is what this person like. This is the data. This is what we think they like. It's up to a third party company to use that data to understand, okay, well, whether I'm going to follow Google recommendation to reach to this target audience, or I'm just going to spam to everyone else.
So and that's probably what's happening to me,
right? That's probably what happened to you right now. But do not mistaken that Google do not have your data, right? Because every time, even though you say that you do not share your data, they will have it.
Yeah, regardless.
That word, okay, Google, is basically a microphone, just always on. Try to pick up that specific phrase, right? Imagine what other phrase that you say that not related to okay Google that will be fit into the server. Now Google said that this will never happen, but
would you know?
Yeah, would you know? Who are you to check this out?
Yes,
right?
Correct.
Not and then GPS location, your Google Map running at all time. Google Map used to have this feature where you can actually go on this one page and then just see where you went through the whole
Yes,
map.
and I do have it. I do have it, right?
And that's data.
Yeah.
That's data for you, right? Even though you do not choose to share it, but they have that.
Right. So so Google Maps recently just asked me, right, do you want your location to be tracked? And I was like, okay, you know what? Let's try it out, because Google Maps has been always good to me, right? I freaking hate using Waze, right? I hate using Waze. I know it's the same company. I hate it. Because I don't know what the hell they're collecting. It's a social media app. It doesn't make sense. Why do you need a social media app to get you from point 1 to point B?
It's a community type of thing.
Yeah, and the cops are on it, putting roadblocks wherever, right? To divert people into actual roadblocks, right? Come on, people, think about it, okay? Cops are also on it, right? So anyway, So recently, they've been asking me, right? Like sometimes, in fact, like when we come here and hang out, right? They ask me, hey, we don't know where you are on this time because, well, this place signal is bad here, right?
Yeah, especially in the basement of parking.
Exactly, right? So they're like, no, we can't track you anymore. Like, can you please tell us where you are? And I'm like, sometimes I don't want to let you know where I am. So what I do is sometimes they tell me like, we don't know where you are. So I put them at the
But they knew where you are, right? They knew that precisely from the starting position to the end position.
Yes.
True. By one point they can't trace you, but it's not like an hour gap. It's more like a 2 or 3 minute
yes,
gap.
correct.
But they still have the data on where you are precisely.
Yes, so an estimated location,
Yeah,
right? But if they want to know my exact location,
radius.
so what I do is I don't put this location, right? I put it at the Chinese what we call it kopitiam here, right? That Chinese hawker stall
Restaurant
down there,
and so
right?
on, different cafe for a different
Correct.
radius. I mean, it's not what you're doing. It's wrong, but it just doesn't.
It's not going to benefit.
It's not benefiting anyone, right?
Right.
It's not benefiting you. If you don't feel like you comfortable to share with this data, first of all, you should turn it off. You should turn off your GPS at all time. But if you do, then just give what they want because it's benefiting you.
Right. So because for me, I actually like the feature, right? Because it recommends me like locations and for example, if I go to this place that I'm not familiar with, right? And I want to find some food, I want to find a convenience store and all that. So Google actually does that, right? Because they actually have that program where they go up to like small, medium, large businesses and tell them like, hey, put yourself on Google Maps, right? Let yourself be known, let people find you easily. To the point that they're also saying that, you can 3D view the entire interior of the office, which I think that's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, they don't have to sell it anymore. I mean, obviously, whoever they have a business, they will put it in Google.
Right, because it makes sense. I mean, you can do it with your current phone also, right, with the panoramic view and all that.
But, so good, like you, which is the nearby recommendation people thought because of exactly where you are, and that's the popular places. But it's actually fitting more of your preference. They don't recommend you, for example, like if there's like a beauty salon that have 200 traffic in a day, they're not going to recommend that to you because they know you are not that audience.
Yes.
Right. So these are part of the data.
That is quite important, right? So okay, now we talked about a lot about data being collected by people like you and me, right? Like adults that are out in working, but there's also that fear, right? That they are collecting data from kids.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. So I actually spoke with 2 of my colleagues, right? One of them who actually appeared in our Mashable Podcast episode 1, right? So Rial. So if you guys don't know, check back episode 1. Very cool guy, also a very close friend of mine. And I asked him the question.
His voice is so sexy.
Sorry? His voice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I was like, John and I were discussing like, we need to get a dad, right? Because he's about pornography, right? And we were like, let's get Rial because he has that beautiful voice.
You
right?
should voice over a trailer.
Yeah, right. So yeah, he's actually an MC, right? Okay. But anyway, so he has a very young kid, right? And we asked him like, what if your kid is like on YouTube, because YouTube has a kids section, right? Even Netflix has a kids section, right? Netflix has a kids section, guys. Please remember that. A-Flix. So anyway, so we told him about that, right? Regardless whether they have a kids section or not, they're still going to collect your data, right? Especially if your kid has a Gmail, because now anyone can sign up for a Gmail, right? Age is, you can lie of your age. And so he said that, as long as they're using it for good. But then that brought upon another question that I wanted to ask him as well. And, that's where he said that it was scary. Now, what if these companies are collecting data on your kids, right? And they are kind of like brainwashing you towards particular brands, right? For example, if you look at the LV brand, right? Now, LV is, honestly, to me, it feels like it's a cult.
Are you talking about the
Louis Vuitton?
Okay,
right?
the handbag brand.
The handbags and all that. So, like, people are obsessed with this, right?
Yeah, I think I get what your point is for kids, but for data collection for kids is a very, very serious case. It is widely regulated. For US, is the act under COPPA, Children Protection Act. It's a very serious thing. In the European, the Data Protection Act already, I believe Article 26, that have a whole article section collecting about data.
Right.
But if you were to compare that to, let's say, YouTube Kids or Netflix Kids, technically speaking, they do not collect the kids' data. What they do collect is the history of who watching it. Because kids in YouTube and Netflix are more categorized, right? Whoever that own that account are still an adult. kids will never be able to open Netflix account or YouTube account.
Right. Yeah.
For US, it will be the age above 13.
Yes.
And for European, it's above 16. But it's still that type of users are owned by this adult. So what does it mean, right? For YouTube and Netflix and so on. So it's, for example, it's under your name. They know that you are 26 years old. You are watching kids section. What does it tell in terms of data? It tells that you have a children.
Yes.
Right, you have a children and so on, and that's what they're doing with the data. They aim your product that could be beneficial for you because you have a children and so on. That most likely the realistic way of using data. So by pushing content like they're gonna maybe brainwashing kids into a certain type of product loyalty, that is unlikely because this type of content is regulated and it just doesn't really make sense because they don't know anything about their children, and children do not have the same buying power as adults.
Right.
So they use data to understand that you have a children, how many children do you do, what is the age of your children roughly. They don't know anything about your children. But with that data, they're able to push you towards a good, even a better recommendation list. Might be a breast milk, maybe a crate, maybe a trolley, baby trolley, who knows, depending on what you're watching. But that recommendation is towards you, not towards your children.
Your children. Okay, so this is something I want to know as well, okay? Because so let's say Rhea, they know you have a kid, right? And they know that if the kid is using your account, they're probably going to be watching YouTube Kids. But YouTube Kids also has ads.
Yeah.
Right? Now, can companies, okay, for example, hypothetically, call dibs on this kid? For example, let's say I am, let's say a company, a toy company, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
What's that YouTube channel? Ryan.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, one of the biggest YouTubers, right? The most earning YouTuber, right? So, for example,
it's like one video contained 3 different ads.
Yeah.
Roll, beginning and the end.
Correct. So, let's say, right, like a toy company now has that data, right, from Google and say like, I want to call dibs on this kid. So, for example, they know, let's say I have a kid, right? And if my account is watching YouTube Kids, they automatically assume that my child is watching it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, what if that toy company calls dibs on my kid and starts pushing ads, that particular ad to the kid, right? From this age until this age. And then eventually, I'm pretty sure they would know when my kid makes a Gmail account of their own.
Yeah.
So is that a fear?
Yeah, that is the biggest fear right now. I think starting from last year, the regulator in US are pushing that. They're saying that that's it. Kids show, no more product placement.
Nice.
They're doing that.
Okay.
But the problem with that is only practice in US. It's not practicing anywhere in the world. So what happened is that if you watch that show, especially that video YouTube show in US, sure, you don't have the advertisement. But if you, let's say, somewhere in Singapore or somewhere in, not European nation, but Asia or maybe in the Middle East, you will have that ads. But yeah, regulator in the West are so much afraid about this. In fact, they pushed a regulation last year saying that there's no more product placement in kids shows. Advertising is fine, but not product placement.
And that's pretty scary, right? Especially to parents who are listening, right? That this is a possible.
It opened up an unwanted content. You open up an unwanted conversation. Product, yeah, sure. What is the harm? It's just product loyalty. You can advertising toys and so on. But what if someone decided to push a political advertisement into part of that type of video?
Yes.
Right? Agenda and so on, or maybe a message or whatever it is. Because you can't say that, okay, a type of show can only have one type of ad. That kind of law does not make sense. So the easier people or the lawmakers to make a regulation is that's it. Kid shows, no more ads or no more product placement ads.
But the problem is, it's
not enforced.
Yeah.
It's not enforced in other part of the world outside of the West.
Right. So basically, there is no possible way for us to run away from our data being collected, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the important thing is that people need to know, right? Are companies taking away our freedom? right? Our freedom to be on the internet, to search for what we want. If I want to search, how to make a bomb, right? It might just be for educational purposes, because the reason is, if I know how to make a bomb, I know how to disarm a bomb, right? I know what is the blast radius of a bomb, right? And this is information that we need because war is going on, right? War is going on, and there's something that we can't avoid. And some people even speculate that there's a Cold War going on now, right? Companies are racing to take out technology. Far-fetched, right? But the point is that if that becomes reality, information is super important, right? So companies are tracking everything that we do. Google is tracking, and you use a lot of Apple products. Apple is definitely tracking you, right? Do you think that is taking away our freedom, right? That we don't have any more freedom to do what we want?
Not really. I think the first example that you given are more like censorship, right? Censorship need to be there to just filter out bad content. If you someone who are relevant in that field and required to consume that content, there are many ways for you to consume that content. Maybe from the corporation that you are with. But if you are someone who are not in that industry, censorship is important, right? To prevent this type of unwanted
breaches
and so on. But if you're talking about freedom, then yes, of course, that's why the lawmaker and regulator, that's why data is very regulated, right? They have to again anonymize the data to make sure that it's not pinpoint to someone specifically. But good thing about this question, the word freedom, is one subject that have extra exception. Gun owners, private gun owners in US.
Right.
So what happened is that if you buy a gun in the United States, you are required to fill that form.
Yes.
Unlike all the stuff in the world where you fill that form, it will go to it will go to some company. It will go to it will turn into a digital and become a register and become a searchable format. It's just normal, right? That happened to your medical information, medical ID. That happened to your driving license and so on. Every time you fill a form, company personal ID. Every time you fill a form, that will go into the computer, but not gun owners in America. The NRA lobbyists fought so hard. This is not a good thing. I'm not defending a gun owner. I'm just saying this is what's happening right now. The NRA lobbyists fought so hard in the Congress in America, saying that gun owners should not, the data for gun owners should not be a searchable content. So what happened in tracing center in West Virginia in United States, what happened is that they have all this, there's only one tracing center in the state. There's only one. The whole country of the United States, there's only one tracing center in the state, in West Virginia. And what happened is that all this paper form, they kept it in large containers. And yes, they translate that into a digital, but as a PDF or JPEG, is it not a non-searchable content? Right. It's not like, let's say, someone commit a criminal activities and they find a guns, and what happened is that they give this gun ID to the tracing center, and then it's not like they can just go to the register and type in the name, and then this is the people who own it. They can't do that. They literally have to go one by piece by piece, paper by paper, to know who this person is. And that because the NRA lobbyists are fight so hard for this. So technically speaking, it's not a good thing, but if I believe that if there's a lobbyist that fought hard enough for your data, you can achieve the same type of strict regulation of freedom.
But then you will lose the point of that you get more relevant content, right? And
I don't agree that they do this with guns. I think in matter of fact, gun owners or gun content should be part of the searchable content.
So it's interesting, right? You have more privacy
for a gun.
Yeah, for a gun than you have on your own computer.
It's crazy. Yeah, that's the world that we live in. You have more privacy by owning a gun, so on.
So okay, I think we reached to the end of our time already. So just want to ask you a few simple wrap-up questions, right? So do you think that companies are always collecting our data?
Yeah.
Do you think that we should charge them for that, right? So if I'm using a service, you're going to collect my data, I should be compensated for it because it benefits them more than it benefits me, right?
Yeah, there's a movement called the 2 degree, the 2 degree movement, which is you opt in into a certain type of program, and you get a benefit from it. You get paid for your data and so on. But it's in reality, it's up to the company whether they want to implement this program or not. Because if you're using a free product, you are the product, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you do not agree on this type of term, the only choice for you is to not use that product.
Right.
But I guess because of the missing out culture, you kind of like compensate that.
The FOMO culture.
Yeah, like which would you rather choose, right? Missing out, protecting your data.
Right.
I'm pretty sure like most of people these days they will let that data go.
Yeah, they're willing to sacrifice
They're
it.
willing
Because
to sacrifice
for me as well, I think that, if a company is providing you a service for free, there has to be a way that they have to keep their upkeep, right?
Yeah.
So the only way is your data. Right?
Yeah. So sure, you should get paid because your data is your asset.
Yeah.
Right. It's your belongings. It's your 1 and 0.
But you're getting paid in the form of using their service without any charge.
The question is who's gonna pay for it,
Yeah.
right? That's up to the buyers.
So that's our choice whether we want to do it or not, right? Yeah. So like, for example, I think if Facebook were to start charging a monthly fee, I think a lot of people are gonna get upset.
Not really. I mean, Facebook don't have the biggest impression right now. Sure, they will lose a lot of markets, but they are not. I mean, they have any other business like Instagram and so on.
Mhm.
Easy could sustain themselves.
Right. Yeah. That's
that.
true. That's true. So okay, I think the last question is, how much of your data are you willing to share? For example, if I were to ask you right now, okay, what is the address of this exact location? Which, by the way, we are shooting in your house right now, right? So would you let the internet know?
No.
Which is actually the same question that Congress asked Mark
Yeah.
Zuckerberg, right?
Yeah.
Would you let people know where you stay?
No. Again, whichever data that intact to you personally should not be shared, right? I think like misconception is a common question that people ask. Like you should be anonymous at all the time. When you do online transaction, when you online, every day you should just be anonymous. Every time you log in your computer, you should be anonymous. Well, technically, it's almost impossible to stay anonymous. You can't stay anonymous. They already have the data on you. They know where you logged in. It coming from the website that you're going in, or even your internet provider. They already have that information. So you can't really stay anonymous. But a good practice is that how can you protect your data, right? How can you protect your data? And to do that is by having, by escalating your general sense of awareness about who you're giving this data access to. So if you know that you're using Facebook, using any other third-party app and so on, you should, be mindful, what type of data you're giving this to. If they're asking for your name, if they're asking for your email address, think about it, whether it is relevant or not. If you download a photo image that turn your face into someone older or filter, should they have the access to your microphone?
Yes.
Or obviously not.
Yes.
You have to think about that. Just have a good knowledge of, just have a good sense of, who you're sharing. Yeah, be aware of who you're sharing your data with.
So I think that's a very good thing, right? Because you use a lot of VPNs, you use password managers and all that. So maybe can you just give like simple advice to the people, right? Like the easiest way to keep your data private. Right?
Yeah. So again, to protect your data, number one, I think, is to have that mindset of the awareness who you're giving your data to. Just that awareness. From there, you can make a decision. Make a good decision whether you want to tighten your security or so on.
Mm-hmm.
And one way to do that is to create a proxy, if possible. So proxy means that you can, for example, if you try to sign up with a website, don't use your real email. Use a proxy email. Use a dummy email that you would do, right? If you were to make a payment online transaction, you can easily use a tool online that gives out a debit, like a dummy credit cards that you put money in,
Yes.
and then like privacy.com, something like that. and VPN obviously to protect your
Location.
locations
Yeah.
and reaching.
So guys, I hope that you might learn something from this. I hope that you understand a lot of these things are happening out there, right? A lot of these breaches, a lot of this selling of your information is going on, right? That to the point that it has actually affected an election. For example, the Facebook Analytica, Cambridge Analytica, right? That's the name of the company. Yeah. So we live in a dangerous time. We live in a time that we are all connected to the internet. We cannot hide. There's no possible way to be fully anonymous, right?
It's just out of the question.
Yeah, it's just out of the question, right? So I hope that this might shed some light. This might shed some light on the understanding that we are in a technological age. We're not making fire from sticks and stones anymore. So hopefully you guys learned something about this. Remember, this podcast is on Spotify and on YouTube. Our account is the Mashable Southeast Asia Podcast. And with that, guys, I'll see you in the next podcast.
All right.